Good morning. This is Board of Public Works and Safety, City of Kokomo, Indiana, Wednesday, November 30th, 2016. First order of business, approval of the minutes from the meeting held on November 23rd, 2016.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is to approve the minutes from the meeting held on November 23rd, 2016. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Any items of business from police or fire department? Next item, new business. Consider adopting finding of facts for the 1005 East Furman Street. I have the finding of facts, and I'm going to read the section 10. A copy of this document is available for anybody that requests. Based upon the record present in this matter and being duly advised in the premises, the City of Kokomo Board of Public Works and Safety affirms the order of enforcement authority dated October 5th, 2016, ordering demolition of the structure located at 1005 East Furman Street, Kokomo, Indiana. That this confirmation made by the City of Kokomo Board of Public Works and Safety is subject to the rights and appeal of any person holding a substantial property interest in the property subject to the order. And I move for the adoption of the finding of facts.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is to approve the finding of facts for the property at 1005 East Furman Street. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Next item we have is to consider public hearings updates for unsafe structures. Deputy Chief Hall.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have an order to demolish on a garage. We have an unsafe garage at 1109 South Cooper Street. The order to demolish was issued on September 22nd, 2016, with all parties have been notified by certified mail with proper receipt. The board adopted its finding of facts on this property on October 26, 2016. The 10-day appeal deadline is passed for all interest parties, and the order to demolish has not been complied with to date. As a result, per IC Code 36-7-9-10, I am asking the board for permission to enforce the order to demolish on the garage and allow city crews on their property to demolish and remove the garage at 1109 South Cooper.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is to approve the demolition of the garage and allow city crews onto the property to demolish and remove the garage at 1109 South Cooper Street. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item we have is to consider awarding a bid for the Home Avenue Reconstruction Project, project number E1602-1F. I have a memorandum from John Pike. The lowest and most responsive bid received was from E&B Paving, Inc. in the amount of $973,355.90. The engineering department's estimate was $1,005,000. Therefore, I recommend the Board of Public Works and Safety award the construction contract to E&B Paving, Inc. in the amount of $973,355.90 and accept the performance and payment bond from Continental Casualty Company in the amount of $973,355.90.
I'll make a motion to approve.
A second.
Motion is to approve the bid being awarded to E&B Paving for the Home Avenue Reconstruction Project. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Next item I have is to consider awarding a bid for the Market Street Reconstruction Project, project number E1602-1G. Again, I have a memorandum from John Pike. The lowest and most responsive bid received was from E&B Paving, Inc. in the amount of $274,357.89. The engineering department's estimate was $282,000. Therefore, I recommend the Board of Public Works and Safety award the construction contract to E&B Paving, Inc. in the amount of $274,357.89 and to accept the performance and payment bond from Continental Casualty Company in the amount of $274,357.89.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is to approve the Market Street reconstruction bid being awarded to E&B Paving, Inc. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Next item we have is to consider a plat for the Moose Creek subdivision. I have a memorandum from Kerry Stranahan, City Engineer. Attached for our review and approval is the plat for the above referenced subdivision. The plat was approved unanimously by the Kokomo Plan Commission on November 21st. No bonds are required for this subdivision. I recommend the Board of Public Works and Safety approve the attached plat.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is to approve the plat for the Moose Creek subdivision. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Next item is to consider a dedication of right-of-way for Purdom Street. I have a memorandum from Jesse Johnson, Systems Project Designer. Attached for our review and approval is Purdom Street right-of-way dedication over property that the city owns. This action is pursuant to the relocation of the Duke Energy transmission line from the Kokomo Municipal Stadium area. I recommend the Board of Public Works and Safety approve said Purdom Street right-of-way dedication.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is to approve the right-of-way dedication for Purdom Street. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Is there any correspondence?
There's none.
Items of business from the public. Items of business from board members. I have two items. First one is the waterproof East Side City Hall. We have a memorandum somewhere. Yeah. From Craig Boland, building manager. Recommend that the board approve the lowest quote of $38,455 proposed by Reed Contracting for the waterproofing of the east side of City Hall. It's the atrium area out here that they've continued to have problems with. There's 3 bids that were received. Reed had the lowest bid of $38,455.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is to approve awarding the bid to Reed Contracting for the waterproof of the east side of City Hall. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Next item we have is grievance number 2016-04. Grievance 2016-04 was submitted for public hearing. All parties present today wishing to speak, please come forward.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chris Frazier, Kokomo Fire Firefighters Union President, Local 396. We're coming to request a hearing on the issue of our grievance regarding the use of the tanker from Harrison Township in a house fire.
Okay. Am I correct that this is the hearing? Yeah, this is the hearing.
Okay.
So it's your right obligation to present all facts you wish to be heard before the board relative to the grievance that you filed.
Okay, correct. All right, on October 19th, 2016, Battalion 2 of the Kokomo Fire Department was dispatched to a house fire with smoke showing on 3112 Oxford Street, Kokomo, Indiana, 46992. That was an area that had been annexed in one of the recent annexations. I think it was the West Side annexation that was brought in. Tanker 1 was not in service on this day. The reason Tanker 1 was not in service in that day is because it's our practice to not call in overtime to fill that position if we are short on manpower. Tanker 1 has been out of service approximately 90 full days in 2016, and this does not include partial days where it may be in service in the morning, but taken out during the day as manpower lowers. The number of that is approximately around the same number of days. We can't get an exact number that it has been. Battalion Chief 2 called for Harrison and Roosevelt Volunteer Fire Departments for water supply. Oxford Street was annexed by the city and does not have fire hydrants. This area relies on Tanker 1 being in service to provide water for fire protection. Harrison Township Volunteer Fire Department arrived on scene and supplied water for KFD to fight this fire. It is the opinion and the finding of the grievance committee that anytime Tanker 1 is being taken out of service, this violates Article 10, Section 8 of our agreement with the City of Kokomo and the Board of Public Works and Safety. One of the things we feel in this is that anyone who is in the City of Kokomo that has a hydrant in front of their home, they rely on that hydrant. They don't know when the last time it was used. It may have not been used for years. It may not have ever been used. But they rely that water that is there and available. Our position now is that any time that we would have to call out the tanker and it is not in service, then we are going to be relying on the volunteers to show up. Now, whether or not the volunteers are at their station, whether or not they're available, is unknown to us. We do not know if that is going to happen or not on any given day. The other option that we've run into, and this has happened since this grievance has been filed, is on November 20th, 2016, at the 1700 block of North Alfalfa, we had another fire run come in, and our solution to that was the battalion chief on duty called the tanker out, but he took a person off of Engine 2 to bring the tanker, which left Engine 2, which services the southeast side of the town, short-staffed. So our choices now are we're either going to violate our contract and use the volunteers to do our job, or we're going to have to pull people off of our own fire trucks and run as two-man trucks during this time.
Okay. And prior to the hearing, you supplied us with all documents relevant to this case, correct?
The only thing I have is I have a information that I just got about the run on Malfalfa that I referred to. And it's just a run number for the city of Kokomo.
Okay. All right, but you did file a grievance, and grievances went through the process?
Yes, correct.
Okay, and the grievance is what you're here for today, correct? And in the grievance, you're citing Article 10, Section 8.
Correct.
Article 10, Section 8 reads, except in an emergency situation. Was the incident on Oxford, what is that, Oxford Drive? Street, was that not considered an emergency?
Every fire would be considered an emergency.
Okay.
And our contract states that will not be called in for firefighting operations, which is I guess an oxymoron. It does not meet up in language that you can't consider an emergency. An emergency would be, a situation where, let's say, we are short of ladder trucks and can't fight a commercial fire that's too large, okay? We have our ladder truck out there and we need more. So we resort to call Grissom Fire Department, or we call Harrison Township, or another entity that would have a truck. That would be an acceptable use of other fire departments in this situation. Everything we do is an emergency. You're talking about excessive emergencies in the language, is what that would refer
All I'm
to.
doing is taking your grievance
Right.
and I'm asking questions.
That's my
relevant
answer to the
grievance,
question.
Because you do cite only Article 10, Section 8. Article
Yes.
10, Section 8 reads, except in an emergency situation, no personnel except those of the Kokomo Fire Department shall be used to fight fires, right?
Correct.
It is not the intent of the city to call outside assistance to fight fires in order to deny off-duty unscheduled overtime. Okay, so that's your issue, right? Your
Correct.
allegation is that the city of Kokomo or Kokomo Fire Department management violated that provision, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Your remedy in here is mandatory staffing. Where within the confines of the collective bargaining agreement do you draw your position that a violation of Article 10, Section 8 requires mandatory staffing for anything?
My contention is that any time that there is not a person manning that truck, the only option is to call in volunteer fire departments to fill that void.
Okay, but if you take a look at your contract under Article 10, Section 6, it provides for calling in of unscheduled employees for whatever instance that may arise, correct?
Correct.
It also provides a minimum guarantee of hours for the calling in of an
Correct.
employee, correct? If the city of Kokomo, in an incident in which a need arises that they believe additional firefighters are necessary, is it not Article 10, Section 6 that we're obligated to follow?
No, it would not operate that way. It would
Is-
not, it
is
would be an impossibility to operate using that section of the contract. The reason being, in a fire, if we are going to call in overtime to have somebody come in and get on that tanker and bring it to your water supply at your fire, I hope it's not your home that we're coming to. The time period does not work out where you could possibly call in overtime, get the person there, have them get on that truck and bring it to us in a timely manner to be effective at a fire.
Again, I'm not going to talk philosophical, Chris.
I'm not talking philosophical. I'm talking about
contracts
operational.
only. If, under the contract, if I'm to be called into work because fire department needs me, Article 10, Section 6 addresses that, does it not?
Correct.
Okay. And it mandates that the city of Kokomo, in that scenario, guarantees one of your members a minimum of 4 hours. Is that not correct?
Correct.
Okay. So on October 19th, in the incident at 3212 Oxford Street, when a need arose that additional firefighters were needed, the obligation under the contract was to have called unscheduled overtime for employees to come in rather than outsource or call outside assistance. Is that not correct?
It could be correct in the idea of you are trying to fill a spot that is going to be used for a period of time. In an emergency situation, you cannot call in overtime and expect it to get there in a timely manner. That is for the day, you know. Chief O'Neill understands how this works. He's done this for years. You cannot call in a person for an emergency situation that is going to last maybe 20 minutes off duty to get there for that. That's an impossible expectation to try to use.
Well, Harrison Township is a voluntary fire department, is it not?
Yes, they are.
And if we put a call out for assistance from Harrison Township, do they not have to call employees or volunteers to come in to assist?
Yes. The day in question, they just happened to be at the station right down the street.
Okay.
Somebody just happened to be there that day.
Had they not just happened to be there that day, though, their system would have been to put out tones or whatever.
Correct. And
For
somebody
their volunteers to
who may be working at Chrysler might have to try to leave work and come and get that truck and come.
Right.
Or somebody who is far away at their home may have to come and get that truck.
Well, my
Our
point-
water supply is a very time-sensitive issue.
Okay.
In a house fire, water supply is very important. It has to be there when we need it. It has to be there at the beginning. It can't be something that shows up 20, 30 minutes later. If it shows up 20, 30 minutes later, you've wasted your time calling them. You've burnt the house to the ground.
What's Harrison Township doing in that scenario if they have a fire out in their jurisdiction?
All I can say is if you watch the papers, you can see what usually happens in the volunteer responses. If they happen to be at the house at the time, they usually get there to time the manner and do something.
Again-
But what will happen is they will not arrive for 20 minutes at the fire. That's the nature of the volunteer fire department.
But that-
The volunteer
that's
fire
right.
department.
That is how they have to
Yes,
manage their
yes.
operations. Is that
We
right?
at the Kokomo Fire Department would like to operate as a
I
professional
understand you'd like
firefighters.
to operate different.
And-
Right now, all we're talking about is what this contract requires,
Okay?
okay? Where in this contract does it require that we maintain or man any piece of operation?
Where does it require it?
Yeah.
I think the requirement is the nature of the city of Kokomo. That is your mandate.
In the contract.
Where does it require that you have a fire department at all?
In the contract. It doesn't.
That's
the
what I'm
point.
asking.
That is absolutely the point. Whether I have a paid professional fire department or I have a voluntary fire department. Depends on whatever system the community accepts.
Correct.
Your job as president of the local union is to make arguments contained in this
contract,
contract as
correct.
to what the city of Kokomo violated. I want to hear those arguments as to what's in this contract that the city of Kokomo violated.
My argument is that any time that that truck is out of service, our standard response, our standard operating guideline will be to call a volunteer fire department in to do that job. That is our standard operating response in the situation. So anytime that that truck is not in service, the only remedy to that, to get water to us if a tanker is needed, is to call a volunteer fire department and not call our people in to do that job.
Well, isn't it true that Engine 2 has the capacity to provide that type of wire, except that on this day and date, that engine happened to be out of call or in service or something like that? Is that not a-
I think at that particular time, on that day, I'm under the impression that that truck was out of service, but I'm not sure.
Do
But I can address that question that you're bringing
Okay.
up about Engine 2. To say that Engine 2 is a tanker, Engine 2 is an engine. It carries a more water than a normal engine. It has 1,500 gallons on it. So it's being classified by our fire department administration as a tanker, okay? Which, if we have a fire out on the maybe south or the northwest side of town, and there is a need for a tanker, they could pull Engine 2 out of service
Yep.
from its area, send it out to operate as a tanker, which takes the engine from that area out of service. There will not be an engine for the southeast side of Kokomo, which is, if that's the means of operation, then that's a means of operation. But that truck can go out there. Now, to say it's a tanker when I am the captain of Engine 2. So if I have a fire in Oakford or around Indian Heights area or anything southeast, and my truck is going to be the first truck there, I'm going to pull up and I'm going to pull lines off my truck. My truck is no longer a tanker. My truck has now become an engine. It has laid lines and it cannot leave the scene. The nature of a tanker is it brings water to and from a fire scene, from a fire hydrant or a static source of water somewhere else, okay? To say Engine 2 is a tanker is a very bad representation of what that truck actually does.
Okay. All right. Do you have any other contractual arguments that you want to make relative to this case? Contractual arguments.
My only argument is that Tanker 1 was purchased by the Kokomo Fire Department and was replaced by Chief Pat O'Neill, who's on your board, because there was a necessity through annexation with what was being brought in
And I want
to have
contractual
that.
arguments. Contractual. Okay. I'm going to bring up Kokomo Fire Department administration to make their case arguments. You'll then be called back if you
Okay.
want to rebut anything they may have presented, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Susie or Pat, if they have questions for him. They're doing this.
That's all right.
Good questions.
Did you have questions? Okay. They didn't have any questions.
Nick Glover, Kokomo Fire Chief. I'll be happy to answer any questions on the board's behalf.
Again, relative to the grievance filed, and I have a copy of all the documents that I understand that was presented through the process. November 21st, 2016, you've provided a response to the International Association of Firefighters relative to this grievance. Is that correct?
I did.
Okay. Would you like to explain your position or decision as presented in this document?
That's just to that document?
Yes.
Pertaining just to that document?
Relative to the grievance, all I want to hear from anybody is the contractual argument as to why contractually Kokomo is obligated to do one thing or the other. If it isn't the contract, frankly, I don't need philosophical views.
Contractually, the
I just need
Kokomo Fire
contractual.
Department administration is not required to, I am in charge, it's my decision to decide how we man our apparatus.
Okay.
Typically, if we have extra manpower, I have manned tanker 1. You can never have too much water, I guess, but I am comfortable with on an everyday basis, and when engine 2 is in service, it has 1,500 gallons of water on it, and I'm comfortable with that amount of water with the other responding engines to extinguish a fire.
And then on November 21st, you respond to the grievance relative to Article 10, Section 8. Article 10, Section 8 is what the Kokomo Firefighters or International Association of Firefighters allege you violated or your department violated. You provided a response to that, is that right?
I did.
Okay, and your position is that the city did not violate the contract?
Correct.
Okay, and why is that?
There's nothing in the contract saying that I have to man that tanker truck at all times.
Was there anything else relative to the case that you thought or feel that this board should know or you would like for us to know?
I mean, basically, like I said, that's my decision. I have to balance public safety with being a good steward of taxpayer dollars. If I was to comply with the request being made by the union, I would be paying 3 salaries and benefits of firefighters for 365 days a year for a piece of equipment that's only been dispatched, I think, a dozen times this year and was technically only needed once or twice in the last 2 years. The other time that I'm aware of was in 2015 when it was manned. It did respond to a fire in an area of Center Township, and we also called for additional response from volunteers that day.
Okay, and I would note that in Mr. Frazier's supporting documents from the grievance committee references that I believe there were 90 prior incidents to this incident. What did the city of Kokomo Fire Department do in those prior 90 incidents, and why were those not considered a violation of the contract?
He just said there were 90 days in which that truck wasn't manned.
90 other days that it wasn't in
Correct,
use.
correct. It's been our administration's practice when manpower doesn't allow to not man that truck because the truck also in the same station has 1,500 gallons, which is twice as much as most of our engines that we run right now. And it is also, to address Mr. Frazier's question as far as being classified as a tanker, that's not the Kokomo Fire Department's position, that's NFPA. That says anything over 1,000 gallons is considered a tanker pumper.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
No?
Okay. Would you like to come back to rebut anything, or you have?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just didn't want him to speak from out there.
You're right, okay.
The issue here is that we've been on a regressive pattern of employment, which is causing these problems. We didn't have these problems in the past because we had enough manpower to fill these positions. Now we're choosing to not hire. We're choosing to go in a negative direction in the Kokomo Fire Department as far as how many manpower we do keep on scene or staff. Okay, this is a direct result of that. My question to Chief Glover, he can answer this for me, is I would like to know, because there is no policy in place. There's no policy that's been written about this. Anytime that we have to call for a tanker and our tanker is not in service, I still do not know what the appropriate standard operating guideline is of the Kokomo Fire Department. I don't know if it's to call mutual aid from a volunteer. If it's to pull a person off of an engine and leave us short on an engine to run the tanker, we do not know, as a fire department, what our standard operating guidelines are in this situation. And that question is what is the crux of all of this. In my understanding, what we are looking at is any time that this truck is needed and it is not in service, the battalion chief is going to have to call mutual aid from a volunteer fire department to bring us water, which every time that happens is a violation of that part of our contract. Anytime you are operating like that to say, you know, we are going to, let's say we decide to cut 3 engines out and we decide that all we are going to do is rely on volunteers to come in and take that, if those trucks do get called, that is in principle violating the letter of what this says. We are not to use volunteer firefighters or outside agencies to do our job. Our job is to supply water to a fire and fight that fire. Anytime that truck's out of service, we are accepting the fact that we are going to be doing it that way. Or we are going to be pulling a truck out of service that has another function and using it as a tanker.
Good.
And that's my statement to you, and that's why I feel this is a violation of our contract.
Okay, going back to your contract, which contract's important to me because that's what
Yeah.
I'm supposed to follow. You don't disagree that the city of Kokomo has the right, and it is their responsibility to manage the fire department, do you not?
I believe the city of Kokomo and the Board of Works' responsibility is to provide for the public safety of the citizens of Kokomo, including the recently annexed.
Answer my question, Chris.
This is my answer, including the recently annexed areas that do not have water supply and.
Answer my question,
And we're promised
Chris.
that.
My question was, under the contract, do you or do you not agree that the city of Kokomo has the right and responsibility to manage the fire department?
Yes, they do.
Under the contract.
Yes, they do.
Under the contract, the city of Kokomo has certain restrictions that if we are to call for outside assistance, then certain things are to occur. All right?
Okay.
You have a right under the contract we have the right under the contract call employees in for unscheduled overtime for events. Won't argue philosophical whether or not we're better at it than a township is or anything such as that, but if we chose to follow the same pattern that a township did and simply called people in at that time to fight a fire, City of Kokomo, under your contract, has a right to do that. If we fail to do that, then we have violated Article 10, Section 6, and we have to provide a remedy for that. And that remedy is a 4-hour opportunity because we denied you that opportunity under your contract.
Okay.
Under your contract. Okay. Nowhere under the contract is there a article, section, or provision that requires the City of Kokomo to man a single source out there if they chose not to.
Okay.
Is that not accurate?
Okay. Can I?
If you can show me in the contract.
No, my question is just simply this.
Okay.
How do you explain to me that every time that's out of service and we would have to call another truck, you are not intentionally putting us in a situation that will break our contract?
I think that's something that the management of that department has to make a decision, and if it occurs and in every week somebody is missed on an opportunity or missed in the scheduling because they are going outside of it, then you've got an argument now to show me. Now, what you cite in here is that 90 days out of service, but this is the only incident I've heard of where somebody called an outside source instead of having one of our members or one of the employees.
This is the first time it's been brought to my attention as union
First time
president.
mine too.
Correct.
So my point is the evidence does not exist based on what you're presenting today to say, well, this is a serious problem.
It is a serious problem.
I
And
know
the
you're
evidence
philosophically,
is simply this, is that, like I said in my first statement, that is their fire hydrant for those people. People that live in the city and have fire hydrants, you have a fire hydrant accessible. That is their fire hydrant. You are taking it away from them during that time. And as Board of Public Works and Safety, your responsibility is for the
Please don't tell
safety
me my job,
of
okay?
your responsibility is for the safety of the citizens of Kokomo.
Absolutely,
And that should be your number one concern.
And I think it is, and I think we gauge that annually when we look at the ratings that we receive on how our performance.
ISO?
Well, from a couple of different things that come in that tells us how we're performing and comparable to other cities, and
Okay.
I think we still get excellent marks. The last I read, and it's been a while since I've been upstairs, but the last I read, I think we still get excellent marks for doing that.
Okay.
Not unlike the chief back in the back here, who would love to have the 127 police officers that he had in one day. Somebody put property tax caps on that gave us a great deal of limitations on what we can spend, where funds come from. I want to know, and I think the board does, and you guys more than welcome to jump in, speak, ask questions, whatever. I want to know contractually where you can cite the city of Kokomo has violated something in which you believe this board ought to overrule the fire chief and remedy as requested. I need to know contractually.
I believe
what your
contractually,
position is.
Article 10, Section 8 applies to that, and I believe that it applies to any time that would be that situation. You are putting in a situation where you are knowingly going to violate that part of the contract. It's a simple thing to look at. If that truck's not in service, the remedy to that is to call a volunteer fire service to come in and do it. That is a violation of our contract. Every time it's out of service, it is putting in a position to violate our contract.
Well, I don't agree with that at all. If I chose every time I had a fire to start calling off-duty firefighters and said, hey, you're scheduled to come in, I think I've complied with that contract. Do you disagree with that?
I disagree with a lot of things happening in the city of Kokomo, but
I'm asking
that is my opinion. I do not
So
agree with
your
that.
opinion is that the...
We're talking about a time issue. We're talking about a timely manner.
Hey,
You can't call a
I'm
person
talking
in.
contractual issue.
I am
Because
too.
frankly, you're president and your job's to enforce this contract,
Yes.
good and bad.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or don't
Yeah,
like it,
you
it's
can't
good
meet
and
up.
bad.
You can't meet up with the language in that contract by calling in people after the fact.
Is that not the obligation under the contract?
It may be what you think. It is not what I think. It is not my opinion
And
of what that
point do I
contract
ever-
says.
What's the reason in your mind as to why we even have a reference to unscheduled overtime in the contract if the intention is not to call officer or firefighters when they're off duty?
We use unscheduled overtime for daily use. If we're short on a day and they call them in the morning, they come in, that's unscheduled overtime. Unscheduled overtime is any overtime that's called that is not planned ahead, which we have very little planned ahead overtime. It's almost all unscheduled overtime. This is an emergency situation we're talking about, which wouldn't apply to unscheduled overtime. This would apply to, we have an emergency and we are not prepared to respond to that emergency because we are not staffing the truck that is responsible for that emergency.
If I take what you just said, though, there is clearly no violation of, because Article 10, Section 8 says, except in case of emergency.
Everything we do
You're
is
saying
an
this
emergency. Mr. McKay, everything we do is an emergency. There are levels of emergency. A tornado would be an
I
emergency.
understand that. Your contract doesn't say levels,
Okay.
does it?
Do you understand that there is a difference?
Well, I
Do you understand that a fire is a different than
My
a
job is-
emergency?
My job in this hearing today is to evaluate specific provisions of this contract.
Of this
and make
contract,
a determination
correct,
whether
yes.
you're accurate, the city of Kokomo, Kokomo Fire Department violated a provision of this contract. That's what your contract says.
Do we believe in
In
this
fact, if you
situation
go
they
back and
violated
look-
that provision?
If you go back and look under the grievance procedure process, the language will tell you if it's not contained in the contract, you don't even have a right to process it.
Okay.
Okay?
I guess my question is
Your
this.
job is to convince us, you have a right to process it, that there is a specific violation of the contract that occurred, and that we should rectify that. That's your job.
Is it your contention as a board or as an individual that on this situation, in this given day, on October 19th, 2016, that was a violation of our contract, that particular instance?
I haven't made that conclusion yet, until I hear everything here today, and I'm trying to draw out as much as possible from you
Okay.
to look at every section of this
Okay.
entire agreement to say, here's why Chris Frazier's right and why Kokomo violated his contract.
Chris Frazier is not filing a grievance against you. The Kokomo firefighters are.
Chris Frazier's arguing on behalf of
Yeah,
them.
that's my job.
Okay, if I'm to believe Chris Frazier, he should be telling me the provisions that's been violated. If I take Section 10, or Article 10, Section 8, you've said numerous times here today, it was an emergency, therefore it doesn't violate it.
I never said it didn't violate.
You didn't say it didn't violate it, you
You
said
said
it was
that.
not an emergency.
You attribute that to what I was saying. I never said that.
Article 10, Section 8 starts by saying except in an emergency.
Correct.
You're saying it was an emergency. Well, if it was an emergency, then arguably,
Well, I would advise you to reference your fire chief, past fire chief, onto what an emergency means and what we were referring to in the station, because he could absolutely tell you what that means and what the language means. But if you want a concise breakdown of my argument, very simple term, I believe that you, in this process, by calling in an outside source, that violated contract, Article 10, Section 8 of our contract.
Okay.
I believe you are currently, our administration is currently, and I'm not putting blame on our fire chief. he's in a bad situation. I'm putting this in a situation of, I believe that any time you are keeping that out of service, you are knowingly putting yourself in a situation to violate our contract by doing the same thing.
Okay,
That's my contention.
I hear you.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
Is emergency defined anywhere in your contract?
It is not. I do
There's
not
no-
think so.
I've heard you argue, and I don't
Yes.
disagree with you that there
Correct.
might, in theory, be
Yes.
different levels of emergency, but there is no definition of emergency as you have argued.
There is not. But I'm sure in past precedent, there has been plenty of opportunity to determine what emergency means and what it doesn't.
Just so you're aware, the president only occurs during the term of the life of that specific contract. Under your contract, every time you renew a contract, all the old stuff dies.
Okay?
So if in the last, what's this agreement now, 2.5 years? Okay. In the last
Last
two
year
and a
was
half years, if it's occurred, then you ought to bring that forward and say, this is the president.
Right. We're in the second year of this contract.
Okay, and in the second year of the contract, have these incidents occurred which you can define the emergency support for your argument? That's what you need to look at. I'm not sure.
That's fine.
I'm just telling you, I've dealt with labor contracts for 30-some years.
And I've done it for 6 months. I'm new at this. This is all new to me. I'm
Trying to
doing the
help
best
you.
I can. But I am trying to also point out that there is a flaw in the system for the city of Kokomo and the annex people. And I think although all you want to talk about is the contract, I do believe it is your position as a Board of Public Safety to really look into what is going on here and decide, is this in the best interest of the citizens of Kokomo?
I understand your feelings and your theories. Here's the difference. We're obligated both by state statute and by the rules of the city of Kokomo on how to operate. Our job is in protecting public safety,
Right.
regulated by both state statute and your contract.
Correct.
What we have here today is an issue involving the contract. It involves the contract. I can't listen to and should not listen to all of your other thinking and theories around something not relative to the incident
Not
that
relevant
occurred
to this?
on that day. That's right. This is not the place for those type of issues in which you want to discuss. Today is about Article 10, Section 8, because that's all you cited.
Okay.
That's all you cited.
Does anybody else have a question for me on the board?
I do have a comment. I've been referred to several times, and again, Chris, I'm looking at the contract language. That's what personal opinions or my past opinions are irrelevant in looking at a
I would
contract.
believe your past experience is very relevant because you're very
Well,
knowledgeable in
and
this.
thank you, but I'm just saying that that's what I'm looking at. I don't really want to be placed in a place up here where what I did in the past or what I'm going to do in the future, I have to look, like the president said, at the contract. It sounds to me like maybe in the next contract needs to be some language defined possibly, but that's what I
Or if the
have.
union thinks that there are certain SOPs or general orders that needed to be added, that would be something that you could talk to your fire chief
Fire chief
about,
about.
that then would come before this board.
This-
That would be more, that's what this, I think those, the policy arguments that you're making,
So my next policy argument should be, if I really want to argue the finer points of why this should be in service, I guess I should do that at a city council meeting?
No, it goes
No.
internally through the internal system. City council, you guys don't understand. City council has no authority over these
Yeah,
type
no.
of issues.
But they are to represent their citizens.
No,
and
they're not. They're
Yeah.
they're
They don't
budget-
represent the
For
citizens.
your purpose, they're budgetary.
if
I'm
I'm
you,
a citizen of Kokomo, that was my response, that's what I meant.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't care who you go to, okay? You decide on yourself and you make that path. Look, frankly, there's not a soul working within this organization, or probably 90% of the other cities in the state of Indiana, that has not felt the impact of the property tax cap, and we've all suffered from it. We didn't make that decision. Somebody at the State House made that decision. We've all had to make adjustments because of it. At one point, I had 15 people working in the central garage. I have 7 that's trying to manage the fleet. At one point, the city of Kokomo Police Department had 121 police officers. We're about 85, 90 today. We all feel the impact of that,
I
all right?
understand. I
So-
see it as a citizen of Kokomo when I see things aren't
It's all where you
getting
want to
done
put the
around the
money
city.
in.
like
As a
these.
citizen of Kokomo, they had an opportunity to vote on whether or not they accept property tax caps or not. They did so. They made it constitutional. When they did, they locked down where the funding goes for every city. Every city's had to adjust for that. Every city's
understand.
working with that. They've all made what they believe to be acceptable changes. We monitor, as I said, on where our performance is on both the police department, fire department, as well as the rest of the operations, and make judgments there. Your job here today, as I said, is to argue what you've cited.
I feel I have.
And you feel you have, if you're finished with that,
I'm good.
then what I recommend is that I will draft my belief of the findings. I'll submit to the other board members for them to concur or
You can also meet an
dissent.
executive session if you would like.
I'll leave it up to them. I'll put together
If that
what
happens,
what
it
I
would be
think
public notice.
has occurred here, send it you guys,
Will
and
it
you
be a
guys
public
one meeting, and we'll go
What do
from
you
there.
mean? I don't understand what you mean by it.
I know.
I got it.
No, I mean, what does that mean, though, public notice?
I'm sorry, I'm just trying not to speak
Yes.
over because
Yep.
I'm trying
No,
to
no.
record this.
Yes, you're fine, you're fine. Sorry.
That an executive session, we have to give public notice that an executive session is occurring.
Right.
But it's private among just the
Okay, I
members
gotcha. Yeah,
to
I understand.
attend.
I understand what you mean.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear.
No, you're fine.
Yep.
All right, thank you for your time.
Are you done?
I'm
Okay,
done.
thank you. You have anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Okay, again, my recommendation is that I put together the finding of facts, submit copies to the remaining board members for them to concur or dissent with comment if they choose to do so, or to request that we have
An executive session?
executive session concerning the same.
All right, I'll make a motion to go through with President McKay's recommendations.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is for me to draft the initial finding of facts, submit to board members. At their request, we will have executive session. If not, they'll have opportunity to concur or dissent, and so advise, and then we'll come back with a complete finding once we're done within the next, I think we have 21 days to
For the
complete the
contract.
process. All right, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. The next item is probably lost in all the paperwork here.
Claims.
Approval of claims.
Right here.
Approval of claims in the amount of $1,927,861.44 for November 30th.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is to approve the claims for November 30th, the amount of $1,927,861.44. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Nothing further coming before the Board of Public Works and Safety. Meeting is adjourned.